My name is Henry, 36 years old, living in a small town in Ohio. By day I work as a construction worker, enduring the scorching sun and pouring rain, my body exhausted and aching. By night I stand behind the counter at a convenience store, counting every coin, every bill. 2 jobs, 16 hours a day, no days off. Every morning I wake up when the sky is still shrouded in mist. The alarm clock blares at 4:30 a.m., but I'm used to it. My body is weary, but my mind won't let me stop. I don't complain. I do it because my family needs me. My family isn't well off. My parents, after retiring, rely on meager savings and a small pension. They were once hardworking people, but old age and illness have worn them down. Then there's Owen, my younger brother, who's in college. He's the hope of our family, the first one to get accepted into a prestigious school. Owen's tuition, rent, textbooks, all of it comes from me. I don't want him to worry. Don't want him to abandon his dreams. I know how painful it is to leave things unfinished. Today, like every other day, I stand on the construction site, sweat streaming down my forehead. The sound of drills, hammers, and co-workers shouting drowns out my thoughts. I look at my hands, calloused and scratched. They're no longer the hands of a young man who once dreamed of becoming an engineer. But I tell myself, as long as Owen succeeds, it'll all be worth it. When my night shift at the convenience store begins, I'm nearly drained. The cold white fluorescent lights burn my eyes. An elderly customer walks in, buys a can of coffee. He looks at me and smiles. "You work hard, don't you? Don't forget to rest." I nod, but my heart feels heavy. Rest? That's a luxury I can't afford. When I get home at midnight, I collapse onto the bed. My phone buzzes. A text from Mom. "Henry, Owen needs more money for books. Send it soon, okay?" I sigh and open my banking app. Balance, $127. I send $100, knowing I'll be eating instant noodles to get through the next week. But I don't resent it. This is my family. This is my responsibility. I always thought Owen understood what I was doing. I thought he knew every dollar I sent was my sweat, my sleepless nights, my buried dreams. But I was wrong. One weekend afternoon, I drove to the city to visit Owen. He lives in a small apartment near the university where I pay the rent every month. I brought a box of food Mom cooked, hoping to sit and talk with my brother. But when I walked in, I was stunned. The room reeked of expensive cologne. On the table were a designer bag, brand new sneakers, and an unopened bottle of imported liquor. Owen sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone, wearing glossy wireless earbuds. "You're here." Owen looked up, his tone indifferent. He didn't stand, didn't ask if I was tired or okay. I set the food down, trying to hide my frustration. "These things, you bought them?" I pointed at the sneakers, which I knew cost at least $200. "Yeah, cool, right?" Owen grinned, flashing his white teeth. "Got them on sale, don't worry." On sale? I know the price of those things. I know because I've stood in stores for hours calculating whether I could afford a decent pair of shoes for myself, only to give up. I wanted to say something, but my throat tightened. I thought about the days I ate dry bread, the nights I fell asleep on a chair from exhaustion, the constant texts from Mom reminding me to send money for Owen. But instead, I just asked, "How's school going?" "Fine. The classes are easy." Owen shrugged, his eyes still glued to his phone. He talked about a weekend party, a beach trip with friends. He spoke as if that was the normal life of a college student, as if I wasn't paying the price for his carefree days. On the drive home, I gripped the steering wheel, my chest tight. Owen doesn't know. He doesn't see. He thinks money falls from the sky, that I can keep working, keep sending cash without ever running dry. I wanted to scream, to call him back, to ask, "Do you ever think about me?" But I couldn't. I just drove, letting the darkness swallow my pain. I love my parents, but some days I wonder if they truly see me. To them, Owen is the light, the pride of the family. And me? I'm just the one in the background, the one who pays, the one who keeps everything from falling apart. One evening I called home. Mom picked up, her voice brimming with excitement. Henry, Owen just got an A in economics. We're throwing a little party to celebrate. I smiled, though my heart ached. That's great. How are you doing, Mom? I asked, but she didn't answer. She went on about Owen, how he was invited to join a prestigious club at school, how he might become a lawyer. I listened, but no one asked how my day was, if work was hard, if I was okay. Henry, send some more money for Owen, okay? Mom said before hanging up. He needs a new laptop, the old one's too slow. I wanted to say I didn't have any money, that I just paid the electric bill, that I was running on empty. But I just nodded, though she couldn't see. Sure, I'll try. Dad's the same. Every time I visit, he only talks about Owen. He's going to make the family proud, he declares, his eyes shining. I sit there listening, but I feel hollow. No one mentions that I've been working since I was 18. No one mentions that I dropped out of school to help support the family. No one mentions the sleepless nights I spent working overtime to pay for Dad's medicine. I'm like a shadow, existing only to serve. Once I tried talking about myself. I'm thinking about going back to school, I said hesitantly. Dad looked at me, frowning. School? You're too old for that. Just keep working steadily. Owen's the one who needs to focus. Mom nodded, adding, Exactly, Henry. Don't distract Owen. I fell silent, swallowing my pain. They don't see me. They never do. Some nights, when the room is pitch black and I lie in bed, I remember the old me. I was once a dreamy boy, always carrying a sketchbook filled with drawings of bridges and roads. I wanted to be an engineer, to build grand structures. But that dream died long ago, buried under the weight of family responsibilities. When I was 18, my parents lost their jobs. Our house began drowning in debt. I remember my mother's eyes red and teary as she said, Henry, I don't know what to do. I remember my father sitting in a daze, holding unpaid bills. I knew what I had to do. I dropped out of school and got a job at a construction site. Every day I watched my friends head to college while I hauled cement and broke rocks. But I didn't regret it. I did it for my family. In the years that followed, I worked relentlessly. When Owen got accepted into college, I was the happiest person. I thought, if I can't have my dreams, at least my little brother will. I sent money, paid his tuition, bought his books, did everything so Owen wouldn't have to worry. But every time I sent money, a part of me died. I was no longer Henry with dreams. I was just Henry, the brother, the son, the worker. One time I stood in front of the mirror looking at my face. Dark circles under my eyes, messy hair, my smile long gone. I asked myself, what am I living for? The answer was always family, but deep down I knew I was losing myself. I no longer knew what I wanted, who I was. I only knew how to work, send money, and hope that one day things would be different. Then Thanksgiving came, and I drove home with a glimmer of hope that my family might acknowledge me. Our house is small on the outskirts of Ohio, with the smell of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie wafting from the kitchen. I walked in, hugged Mom, shook Dad's hand, and forced a smile despite my body aching from the night shift. Owen sat at the dining table, phone in hand, wearing a pristine new shirt. He nodded to greet me, but his eyes never left the screen. The meal began with laughter and stories. Mom talked about the neighbors, Dad bragged about the apple tree in the backyard. I sat quietly listening, trying to find the family warmth I'd always craved. But then Owen put his phone down and cleared his throat. I have something to say. His voice was confident, almost commanding. I looked up, a bad feeling creeping in. I've been selected for a study abroad program in Japan, Owen announced, his eyes gleaming. Next semester, 6 months in Tokyo. It's a huge opportunity, could get me into a multinational company later. Mom clapped, exclaiming, Oh, my boy is so talented. Dad nodded proudly, saying, Well done, Owen. You have to go. I sat there, my hands gripping my thighs, feeling like the floor was caving in. How much does the program cost? I asked, my voice hoarse. Owen shrugged as if it wasn't his problem. Probably around $20,000 plus living expenses, but it's worth it, bro. This is my future. $20,000. The number stabbed me like a knife to the chest. I work 2 shifts, sleep 4 hours a day, but in a year I only save a few thousand. How could I possibly manage this? Mom turned to me, her eyes sparkling. Henry, you'll help your brother, won't you? This is a big opportunity for Owen. Dad nodded, adding, That's right. Our youngest needs investment. I looked at them, my heart heavy. No one asked if I had the money, if I was tired, how I was surviving. They just looked at me like I was a money printing machine. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Mom, Dad, I'm not sure I can do it. Owen's tuition is already a lot and I'm paying for his rent, Dad's medicine. Before I could finish, Owen cut me off. You're always like this, he said, his voice dripping with contempt. Always complaining, always calculating. This is my chance. Don't you want me to succeed? Mom frowned, placing a hand on Owen's shoulder as if to comfort him. Henry, don't be selfish. Owen's working hard for his future. You have to support him. Dad shook his head, looking at me like I'd committed a crime. You're the older brother, Henry. Your responsibility is to take care of him. I wanted to scream, to slam the table, to ask them, what about me? Am I not a person too? But I stayed silent, swallowing my anger. The meal continued, but I felt nothing but loneliness. That night I couldn't sleep. Owen's laughter, my parents' proud looks, their accusing words kept echoing in my head. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, clutching my phone. Account balance, $83. I let out a bitter laugh. $83 while they expect me to come up with $20,000 for Owen's dream. The next morning I gathered the family. I knew if I didn't speak now, I'd forever be the silent one, the one who sacrifices. I need to talk, I began, my voice trembling. My parents sat on the couch. Owen leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his face annoyed. I can't pay for the study abroad program. I've tried my best. 2 jobs, 16 hours a day, but I don't have enough money. Owen let out a sharp, cold laugh. Not enough money? What do you do with your money, always whining and complaining? I looked at him, my heart aching. He didn't know I ate instant noodles to send him money, didn't know I wore tattered clothes so he could have new shoes. He didn't know, and maybe he didn't care. Mom sighed, shaking her head. Henry, you always make things complicated. Owen needs this opportunity. Can't you find a way? Dad's voice was stern. You didn't go to college, but at least you can help your brother. Don't let Owen down. Their words hit me like hammer blows. I'd done everything, given up everything, but in their eyes I was still a failure. Owen can study here, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'll keep paying his tuition here, but Japan, I can't do it. Owen stepped forward, pointing at my face. You're useless, he snapped. No education, no ambition, just a laborer. Are you trying to drag me down with you? I stood frozen, blood rushing to my head. Useless? Me, the one who funded his education, who gave up my dreams for his future, called useless? I wanted to scream in his face, to tell him about the sleepless nights, the days I went hungry. But I just looked at him, my eyes blurring with anger and pain. You don't know what I've done for you, I whispered, my voice choked. Mom stood up, hugging Owen. Come on, Owen, don't be mad. Your brother will figure it out. Dad nodded as if the matter was settled. I turned, walked to my room and shut the door, not wanting them to see my tears. I'd tried to speak, tried to set boundaries, but they didn't listen. They never do. That afternoon, the whole family gathered. Aunts, uncles, cousins came, bringing laughter and stories. I sat in the corner, trying to blend into the mood, but my heart was heavy. Owen was the center of attention. He talked about college, his friends, his Japan study abroad plan. Everyone marveled, clapped. This kid is the pride of the family, Aunt Mary said, her eyes gleaming. No one mentioned me. No one knew I was the one behind Owen's successes. Then the party became Owen's stage. He stood, raising his glass. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for always supporting me, he said, his voice brimming with confidence. And thanks to Henry, even though, well, he's just a manual laborer. He laughed as if it were a joke. But the room fell silent. I felt every eye on me as if I were an outsider in my own family. "Owen, don't say that," Aunt Mary interjected, but Owen shrugged. "It's true, isn't it? He didn't go to college, has no big dreams. I just want him to help me this one time, but he keeps refusing." He looked at me, his eyes challenging. "Right, Henry?" I gripped my glass, my hand trembling. In my entire life, I'd never felt so humiliated. People looked at me, some with pity, some with curiosity. Mom quickly said, "All right, Owen, sit down." But Dad added fuel to the fire. "Henry, you should think about your brother. Don't let the family down." His words were like pouring oil on a flame. Not only did they not defend me, they sided with Owen. I stood up, my voice calm but cold. "I've done everything for this family. I dropped out of school, worked 2 jobs, paid Owen's tuition, the rent, the medical bills. But I'm not a machine. I can't do it anymore." The room was silent, but Owen just smirked. "You talk like we forced you. You chose to do it, don't blame us." I looked at him, at my parents, at the familiar faces that now felt so foreign. "You're wrong, Owen," I said, my voice breaking. "I didn't choose. I did it because I love this family, but I have nothing left to give." I walked out of the room, leaving the murmurs behind. I didn't cry, but my heart felt shattered. I'd sacrificed everything, but in their eyes, I was just a failure. I drove away from the party, my heart torn apart. The dim streetlights flickered on the windshield, but I saw nothing except Owen's words. "Just a manual laborer." Those words were like a knife cutting deep into the years of sacrifice I'd endured. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed to escape that suffocating house, escape my parents' gazes, escape my brother's contemptuous smile. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at it. Mom was calling. I didn't answer. I didn't want to hear more blame, didn't want to hear them tell me I had to try harder for Owen. I was exhausted. Exhausted from doing everything while no one saw. Exhausted from living a life that wasn't mine. I pulled over on a deserted road, my hands gripping the steering wheel. Then I thought of Uncle George, my uncle, the only person in the family who had ever truly listened to me. He lived a few hours' drive away on a small farm. Without thinking much, I dialed his number. It was late, but I had no other choice. "Henry?" His warm, steady voice came through, slightly surprised. "You okay? It's late." I need to talk," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Can I come over?" "Come on over, I'll wait for you." 3 hours later, I stood on Uncle George's porch. A soft yellow light spilled from the windows, and the smell of burning wood from the fireplace lingered in the air. He opened the door, looking at me with kind but piercing eyes. "Come in, Henry. You look like you've been through hell." I sat down in an old armchair, cradling the coffee mug he handed me. I told him everything. About the 2 jobs, about Owen's tuition, about the dreams I'd buried, about Thanksgiving, the Japan study abroad demand. How Owen called me useless while my parents stood by. Tears fell, though I tried to hold them back. "I don't know what I'm living for anymore, Uncle," I said, my voice shattered. "I've done everything, but they don't see me. I'm just a machine to them." Uncle George listened in silence. Then he sighed, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Henry, do you know why I live alone out here?" I shook my head, surprised. He rarely spoke about his past. "I was once like you," he began, his voice heavy with sorrow. "I grew up with your dad, my younger brother. Our parents doted on him, saw him as the hope of the family. I started working at 15, dropped out of school and supported the family so your dad could go to college. I sacrificed my youth, my dreams, everything. But no one thanked me. They saw it as my duty." I was stunned. I'd never known this. He continued, "By the time I realized I was living for others, I was 40. I left, built my own life. But you know what? I regret it. I wish I'd been stronger sooner." His words were like a ray of light piercing the darkness inside me. I wasn't alone. Someone understood. Someone had walked this path. "What do I do, Uncle?" I asked, my voice trembling. He looked me in the eye. Live for yourself, Henry. Don't let them drag you down. Family isn't a chain. I stayed at Uncle George's until morning. We sat by the fireplace talking through the night. He told me about the years he worked tirelessly, about how my grandparents favored my dad, about the times he wanted to give up but lacked the courage. I used to think sacrifice was love, he said, his eyes distant. But love isn't destroying yourself. You don't owe them your whole life. His words lifted a weight from my chest. I'd always thought I had to do everything for my family, that stopping would make me selfish, a traitor. But Uncle George showed me another path, a path where I could live for myself. But if I stop, what happens to them? I asked, still worried. Owen might drop out. Mom and Dad will struggle. He shook his head, his voice firm. They'll find a way. Owen's old enough to fend for himself. So are your parents. They're not as helpless as you think. They lean on you because you let them. He paused, looking at me. Henry, you deserve your own life. Don't let them take that from you. I thought about Owen, his expensive sneakers, his lavish parties. He didn't value me, didn't value what I did. I thought about my parents, how they always sided with Owen, ignoring me. My heart ached, but for the first time I felt a spark, not hope, but resolve. How did you do it? I asked. How did you walk away? He gave a sad smile. One day I said, enough. I stopped sending money, stopped answering their accusing calls. They were angry, they cursed me, but then they managed on their own, and I found freedom. He patted my shoulder. You're stronger than you think, Henry. Do what you have to do. As the sun rose, I hugged him, thanking him. Driving back, I felt different, not relieved, but hardened. I'd spent my life living for others, but now I wanted to live for myself. I didn't know where that would lead, but I knew one thing: I couldn't go on as before. Back at my small apartment, I sat at the table and opened my laptop. I checked my bank account, $62. I gave a bitter laugh. This was all I had after 18 years of relentless work. But this time I didn't send the money away. This time I kept it for myself. I wrote a long message and sent it to the family group chat. My fingers trembled as I typed, but I didn't stop. Mom, Dad, Owen, I began. I've done everything I could. I paid for tuition, rent, medicine, worked 2 jobs so our family wouldn't go without. But I can't keep going. I won't pay for Owen's tuition anymore, or for your living expenses. I need to live for myself. I hope you understand. I hit send, my heart pounding. The phone stayed silent for a few minutes, then it exploded. Owen called first. I didn't answer, but he sent a message. Are you crazy? You want me to drop out? How can you be so selfish? Mom called, leaving a voicemail, her voice trembling. Henry, how could you do this to your brother? You're his older brother. You have to help him. Dad texted, do you know what you're doing? You're destroying this family. Be a man. Don't be petty and selfish. Each message, each call was like a hammer blow, but I didn't waver. I remembered Uncle George's words. They'll find a way. I turned off my phone, stood up, and looked out the window. The Ohio sky was gray, but I felt a spark of light within me. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. The next day, I went to the construction site, but my mind wasn't heavy anymore. I worked, but I no longer thought about sending money to Owen or my parents. I thought about myself, about saving, about going back to school, about the dreams I'd buried. I didn't know where to start, but I knew I'd taken a step. A week after I sent the message cutting off financial support, life wasn't any easier. My phone was flooded with messages from Owen, anger, pleading, then back to blame. On the 10th day, I was at the construction site from early morning, the Ohio sun scorching my skin. My hands gripped the hammer, striking the concrete with each swing. The sound of drills drowned out most thoughts, but not the pain in my heart. I tried to focus on work, on the idea that I was saving for myself, that one day I'd study again, live for my own dreams. But deep down, I still heard Mom's sobs, Owen's shouts, and Dad's cold silence. At noon, as I rested under a tree sipping warm water from a bottle, I saw a familiar car pull up at the site's gate. My heart sank. It was my parents' car. I stood, wiping sweat from my forehead, bracing myself. I knew why they were here, and I knew this wouldn't be a gentle conversation. Mom stepped out first, her eyes red, a crumpled handkerchief in her hand. Dad followed, his face rigid, his gaze icy. They walked through the dust, straight toward me. My co-workers glanced over, curious, but I signaled them to turn away. This was my issue, and I'd face it alone. "Henry," Mom said, her voice shaking. "How could you do this to your family? You know Owen's struggling. He'll have to drop out without money. Can you be so heartless?" She grabbed my hand, but I gently pulled away. I didn't want to weaken, not now. "I already told you, Mom," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "I can't keep going. I've done everything I could. Owen needs to manage on his own, and so do you and Dad." Dad stepped forward, pointing at my face. "You dare say that?" His voice roared, overpowering the machinery. "Who do you think you are, Henry? Abandoning your family, your brother, for what? To live selfishly?" His eyes were bloodshot, not from tears, but from rage. I'd never seen him like this, and it made me tremble inside, but I didn't back down. "I'm not selfish," I said, meeting his gaze. "I dropped out at 18 to support this family. I worked 2 jobs, slept 4 hours a day, so Owen could go to college, so Mom could have medicine, so you could have a home. I gave everything, but I have nothing left. I'm not a machine." Mom burst into tears, clinging to Dad. "Henry, don't you see how much your brother is suffering? He's working part-time, taking loans. He doesn't deserve this." She looked at me as if I were a traitor. "You're his brother. You have to help him. You can't abandon your family." I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. "Mom, Owen spent my money on expensive shoes, parties, imported liquor. He doesn't value me, neither do you or Dad. No one asks if I'm tired, if I'm surviving. I can't keep living for others." Dad gave a cold, mocking laugh. "Living for others? You talk like we forced you. You chose this, Henry. Don't blame the family." He stepped closer, his voice low but sharp as a blade. "You think you're noble? You're just a worker, uneducated, no future. Owen is the hope of this family, and you're just a failure." His words hit me like a punch to the chest. I stood frozen, my breath caught. A failure? Me, who sacrificed my youth, my dreams to keep this family afloat, called a failure? I wanted to scream, to recount the nights I went hungry, the days I worked until I collapsed. But I just looked at him, my eyes blurring with pain. "I'm not a failure," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. "I did everything for this family, but I won't anymore. I choose to live for myself. If you and Mom don't understand, I'm sorry, but I won't change my decision." Mom cried harder, clutching Dad, begging me to reconsider. But Dad just stared at me, his eyes cold as stone. "You're no longer my son," he said, each word like a dagger. "Go, Henry, live your selfish life, but don't ever come back." I stood there as my parents turned and walked back to the car. Mom was still crying but didn't look at me. Dad didn't glance back. The car engine started and they disappeared into the dust. I stood frozen, my arms limp, my heart shattered. Dad's words echoed in my mind. "You're no longer my son." I loved them, I lived for them, but now I was just a stranger. My co-workers called me back to work, but I heard nothing. I sat by the pile of cement, hugging my knees, trying to hold back tears. I'd lost my family, but deep down I knew I wasn't wrong. I'd chosen myself, and though it hurt, I wouldn't go back. One evening, as I was eating instant noodles in my small apartment, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and froze when I saw Owen standing there. He wore an old hoodie, his hair disheveled, his eyes red and teary. "Henry," he said, his voice trembling. "I need your help. I can't pay rent. The school's threatening to kick me out." I looked at him, my heart softening for a moment, but then I remembered. The expensive sneakers, the lavish parties, his mocking smile at Thanksgiving. "Owen," I said, my voice calm. "You have to manage on your own. I don't have money to give you anymore." He shouted, pointing at my face. "You're selfish. You want to see me fail, don't you? You're jealous because I have a future and you're just a worker." His words cut like a knife, but I didn't waver. "I gave you everything I had," I replied. Now you have to stand on your own." Owen slammed the door, yelling curses before storming off. I went back inside, sat down, my hands trembling. I wanted to run after him to tell him I still loved him, that I just wanted him to grow up. But I didn't. I'd chosen myself and I wasn't going back. 3 months later, I heard about Owen from a friend. He was no longer the flashy guy at parties. Without my money, Owen had to work part-time to cover tuition. His friends, who flocked around him when he had cash, were gone. I heard he lived in a cheap rented room, eating frugally, bitter and alone. Once I ran into Owen at the supermarket. He was thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, pushing a cart with a few packs of noodles and cans of beans. I stopped, about to say something, but he looked at me, his eyes full of resentment. "Happy now, Henry?" he snarled. "This is what you wanted, right?" I wanted to say I didn't want this, that I just wanted him to grow up. But I shook my head. "Owen, you can still start over. Stand up on your own." He scoffed, turned away, leaving me with an empty feeling. I didn't want him to suffer, but I knew he needed to learn to stand up just as I was doing. Owen didn't change. He still blamed me, our parents, the whole world. He sank into bitterness, and I realized he wasn't falling because of me, but because of his own dependence and selfishness. My parents didn't escape harsh reality either. Without my money, they had to cut back. Dad sold the old car, Mom stopped buying new clothes. They lived on their pension, but it wasn't enough. I heard Dad took a part-time job at a store, despite his weak health. Mom started baking for neighbors, trying to earn extra. One day, Aunt Nancy, our neighbor, called me. "Henry, your mom's changed," she said. "She realizes she was wrong to spoil Owen. She says you suffered too much because of them." I stayed silent, unsure how to feel. Part of me wanted to run home, hug Mom, and say I forgave her. But I didn't. I'd come too far to go back. Dad still wouldn't talk to me. Aunt Nancy said he was still angry, but admitted Owen's behavior was their fault. "He says Owen's ungrateful, not like you," she told me. Those words hurt, but also eased my heart. They were starting to see, even if it was late. I didn't see my parents again, didn't call. I knew they were learning to live without me, and I was learning to live without them. We were family, but distance was necessary now. Cutting off family support was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was also the right thing. I no longer woke up worrying about sending money. No longer lived in my family's shadow. I completed a construction technician course and got promoted at the site. With a raise, I moved to a small but clean apartment with a window overlooking green trees. I started sketching again, bridges and roads like I used to. I enrolled in an online engineering course, taking steps to reclaim my dream. Every evening I sat at my desk studying, feeling alive again. I was no longer the Henry of 18 years of sacrifice. I was the Henry of the future, of hope. I found joy in small things. Morning coffee, jogging in the park, chatting with coworkers. I was no longer lonely because I'd found myself. I wrote to Uncle George thanking him for giving me courage. He replied, "You make me proud, Henry." Looking back, I realized my life was once a chain of unconditional sacrifice. I thought it was love, duty, but I was wrong. Love isn't self-destruction, isn't letting others exploit your kindness. I learned to set boundaries, to say no, to live for myself. Owen, my parents, they're my family, but they're also my lesson. I'm not angry anymore. I hope one day they understand I didn't leave because I hated them, but because I needed to breathe, to live. I want them to see that everyone must take responsibility for their own life, that kindness shouldn't be taken for granted. If I could tell someone sacrificing too much, I'd say, "You deserve happiness. Don't let anyone take your worth. Be strong, set boundaries, and live for yourself." I found freedom, not because I abandoned my family, but because I chose to love myself. And that's the most precious thing I've ever done.